Yair Rodriguez is one of the most overrated fighters I've seen in recent history. This man had so much hype going into that Alexander Volkanovski fight. I think none of it was deserved because I'll show you why. I'll show you why, and I bet you'll agree with me at the end of the video. So, what gave him his hype in the first place? It's his striking. His striking is, sure, I'll say it myself. His striking is extremely good. Super unorthodox. He has no rhythm to him, apparently so. Or just like the way he strikes. He throws a head kick. There's no telegraphing. He'll throw a spinning wheel kick to a left hand with no telegraph on it. So his striking is crisp. Some of the best striking you get in the UFC. So that is okay. Like, I'm not gonna say he's overrated on the striking because it is top tier, as good as it gets in my opinion. I mean, he made Max Holloway resort to wrestling to actually beat him because the striking was just too close. It was too crisp. It was too good. But let's take it back a little step and see who he actually fought against to show this amazing striking off against. Because the opponents, like the level of the opponent, is not very good. So I don't think he really proved himself as, a top five fighter, in all honesty, because he kind of fought frauds and got some weird bullshit wins. So let's go back. So he fights Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar beats this man to a pulp for 2 rounds straight. I literally just rewatched the fight to make sure I was right, because last time I remembered, it was like a straight beatdown. And I just barely watched it again, and it was a straight beatdown. I think it was 2 10-8 rounds from Frankie Edgar. And sure, it wasn't old man Edgar that he is today, but this was Edgar right before he went on that crazy losing streak with only 1 win, I believe, after all that. So to have someone like Frankie Edgar beat you down that bad, it's not a very good look in my opinion. And then he fights the Korean Zombie, and he was going on to lose that fight, gets a last second Hail Mary, just back elbow, and actually knocks him out because the Korean Zombie's got no chin anymore because old man Zombie. So sure, some people can call it a fluke. I'll say it was a pretty clean victory, I guess, even though he was about to lose on the scorecards. If you literally look them up, you're going to see that he was going to lose on the scorecards. And then the Jeremy Stevens fights. It's Jeremy Stevens. Come on, like, he's a 50-50 fighter. He gets a no contest against him, and the second fight, he actually beats him. So it's a win, but not really a top tier component. Or, sorry, not really a top tier opponent. And then, of course, he has the fight with Max Holloway, where the striking was extremely close. He really showed off how good his striking was in this fight. But the thing is, Max Holloway really exposed him. I mean, Frankie Edgar kind of exposed him as being a one-dimensional fighter with zero wrestling, where he just lays on his back and tries to throw up submissions and submissions and submissions. Well, that's not going to work. It's not going to work on a top-tier fighter. It's not going to work on Frankie Edgar. It's not going to work on Max Holloway. It's going to work on a fraud like Josh Emmett. But Max Holloway exposed him in that fight. Max looked like Habib on top of him. That's Max Holloway. Like, he's a good wrestler, but he's not. He shouldn't look that good on top of you. Like, that's like if Max Holloway took me down, that's what he would look like on top of me. He shouldn't look like that on a top 5 opponent who's going to be fighting for the title next. And then he fights Brian Ortega, gets a fluke victory. But I mean, I want to call it a fluke, but I guess it was actually a pretty clean submission victory because he did cause the injury, but it was an injury, not really the best showcasing. And it's Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega, in my opinion, is extremely overrated. Has no wins over anybody. His last win was against the Korean Zombie, old man Zombie. I don't remember if he knocked him out. I think he might have got a decision over him, but I don't remember too much. But like, that's not a really good victory to have at this point because Brian Ortega, either he's not in it anymore. Tracy Cortez killed him off apparently, so when she broke up with him, or something. But so he beats Brian Ortega, fluke victory, and then he goes and fights the fraud man himself, Josh Emmett. And Josh Emmett just got exposed as being a fraud against Ilia Topuria, but he got exposed right before that by Yair Rodriguez. But the thing about Josh Emmett is he kind of got exposed before that. He lost the fight to Dan Ige, arguably, and then he arguably loses the fight right after that to Calvin Kattar and gets gifted these decisions, the split decision victory and the unanimous over Dan Ige. Those really shouldn't have gone his way. He should have been on a 2-fight losing streak, and they gave him 2 BS, decisions, and he goes and fights for the interim UFC featherweight title, which honestly should have never even happened. It's not like Volkanovski was injured or anything like that. It was literally just to put some pressure and to put somebody above Max Holloway, because who's going to beat Max Holloway? Clearly not Yair Rodriguez. And then, of course, he wins the ultimate fraud belt off of the fraud himself, Josh Emmett, and starts decorating his belt, making all these gay colors and shit. Sure, it looks kind of cool, but it's an interim belt, bro. Like, it's not the real thing. And we all knew that. Actually, not everybody. I heard so much people picking him to beat Alexander Volkanovski. So much people were saying, "Oh, Yair by a kick to the back of the head when Volk is standing because his striking is gonna be too good. It's gonna be too overwhelming for him." I was saying this beforehand. I've been saying it. Like, if you look at my comments in some videos, you'll probably find it. Me commenting saying that Yair got exposed by Max Holloway. He got exposed by Frankie Edgar of being a one-dimensional fighter. He has a little bit of a submission game, but it only works against guys like Josh Emmett, who are a fraud themselves. So I don't think his ground game was ever that good. And then Volkanovski just exposed him for a third time, basically, in the past couple of years. And he's not improving on it. That's the thing. He never improved his ground game after getting pummeled by Frankie Edgar, and then goes and wins another 2 fights or whatever. And then Max Holloway looks like Habib on top of him. Like, that should be your wake-up call to maybe start upgrading your wrestling. Maybe your takedown defense is kind of shit. But he just ignores it and goes on, wins another striking battle, submits, quote unquote, or gets a TKO, quote unquote, against Brian Ortega, the fraud himself. And then, of course, Volk is going to expose him. And so much people were picking him. The Weasel picked Yair Rodriguez by knockout. Who was the last guy Yair Rodriguez knocked out by a big kick around the head or even by punches? Who was the last guy? Who? The Korean Zombie? Old man BJ Penn? Two old men clearly out of their prime. Of course he's going to knock them out. And he was losing that fight to the Korean Zombie, which is the craziest part. And he gets a little quick last second, super lucky knockout. Just a Hail Mary, essentially. And it works. And that's it. Who else is he knocked out? Nobody. He doesn't have crazy power in his hands. He's got pillow hands. He can hurt you a little bit here and there. His kicks are super flashy. Sometimes they work, but I don't think they're going to work on high-level fighters. So I don't think he'll ever be a UFC champion as long as Volkanovski sits on the top. I think Ilya Topuria will probably beat him, to be honest. I don't think he's maybe top 5, because no one up there is really that good in my opinion. But I don't think he's ever going to be a real champion. And the UFC was trying to hype him up. Yeah, sure, another Mexican champion, but he got exposed as being a fraud. So we don't have no 3 Mexican champions no more. He was never a champion in the first place. Moreno was a champion, sure, but Moreno never actually defended his title. Keeps losing on the first title defense, so that's a whole other thing on its own. But I think he was overrated this whole time. And so much people were picking him as if he was the next coming of Jesus. His striking is this, his striking is that, his striking is good. But Volkanovski showed you how to beat him. I mean, Max Holloway showed you how to beat him. And Frankie Edgar showed you how to beat him before that. And it was just over. I knew Volk was going to take him down. Obviously, in the first round and 2, he's going to take him down and beat him up on the ground, because Yair has no defense on the ground. And then, of course, Volk is going to TKO him eventually. Second, third, fourth round TKO, around there. Got in the third round because Yair has 0 striking defense. So I think he's been overrated this whole time. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And yeah, until next time, guys.